Good morning. My name is Christopher Turner, again, AARP Florida. At AARP, supporting caregivers and providing resources is one of the most important aspects of our work. On behalf of the 48 million caregivers in the state of Florida, nationwide, we celebrate and show our appreciation for you during National Family Caregivers Month. Today, we will be joined by a guest panel to discuss caregiving from a multi-generational perspective. What millennials and Gen Z can be doing to best prepare themselves to care for loved ones, and what considerations and conversations need to take place with family members regarding caregiving options. We will begin by watching a preview of the film My Music, which is part of the Florida Family and Faith International Film Festival, and speaking with the film's director, Ken Jones, about his experience making the film.
You more than my new shoes. I love you more than gangling news. I love you more than my new dress. I love you more than all the rest. No matter how much I love you, baby, I will love you more. No matter how much I love you, I find a way to love you more. No matter how much I love you, keep on doing what you do. No matter how much I love you, I find a way to love you more. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Music plays a vital heartbeat role in My Music, our film, because it was a way for me to creatively get the audience into another world. Music is the escape that Ruth uses as a respite as she's caring for her great aunt who has Alzheimer's. And so she's a singer on the stage in the 1950s, right? She's got this great bouffant hairdo. She's a singer in the 70s, and she's got this massive fro. And then, of course, she's singing the ballad up on the stage in the gown.
This love is a good love. It's a strong love. It's a right love. This love, it's a kind love. It's a tough love. I love to fight for. This love is tears in the rain, laughter through the pain.
Music was so vital to me for me to help get the audience beyond just being in the house, caregiving, and just that story only within that context.
That was amazing. So we're going to get started with Ken. Ken, welcome. And again, thank you for your time for participating in this today.
Yes, it's wonderful to be here and to be able to talk about such a vital topic in this day and time in terms of caregiving, and especially to be able to talk about it in relation to millennials and Gen Zers.
All right, well, and that's a great way to transition to his first question. So let's get started. How did your movie My Music confront the challenges of caregiving and millennials?
Well, one of our biggest goals in My Music is beyond just the entertainment value of the movie is to create a greater conversation about caregiving, especially for millennials and Gen Zers. The actor in the film, Ruth, is 16 years old. She's been sent to be a caregiver for her great aunt who was in her late 70s. And from my own personal relations, we've got to get back to millennials and Gen Zers feeling this love, this caring, this honor to take care of elderly members within our community and our families, especially with the baby boomer population being what it is. And so therefore in the film, we try to show that she cooks, she cleans, she gives her medications. She does everything that she can do in spite of the challenges, of course, of her aunt and her aunt's issues with dementia and these others. And even at the end of the film, she's still smiling.
Right. And as a millennial, I fully appreciate what you're saying and just getting that change in that outlook. And I think what you just said transitions perfectly to this next question. How do you relate the caregivers' challenges with staying compassionate with the integrity of their loved ones?
It's one of the greatest challenges for any caregiver is how do you take care and love your loved one, whether they're a family member or somebody else, and at the same time, still giving them some independence. They want to try to walk with their walker without you helping. They want to try to wipe their face with a rag without you bathing them like a baby, and so forth. They want to try to take care of their bills. They want to go pay their utility bill. They want to try to go to the grocery store. And at the same time, they're not able to do that anymore just because of some of the challenges of age. And so trying to be able to love in spite of, and therefore to respect their integrity. And I think again, this is just one of the things in caregiving that we have to make sure that we're focusing on, especially for Gen Zers and millennials, because again, this is so new to them. And that respect of integrity, where I was raised at my age, that you respect seniors and your elders, and you give them respect and so forth, even when helping them. And even when you know they need help, even though they say they don't want it. And so I think there's the thing there is that, and that's why I'm so happy about this panel. And I'm so happy about the work that AARP is doing, because we have to increase the conversation to increase the actions. And I'm just, again, happy that we're doing this today.
Thank you. And last question for you right now. What are the caregiving challenges for millennials with the rapid increase in those needing care?
Well, we have no choice but to step up our efforts, whether we're individuals, family members, or organizations. And that includes the government also in terms of governmental bodies, because we have a baby boomer population that is aging very quickly, that we have never had to deal with as a country, as a nation. And so we have all of these baby boomers that are aging. And at the same time, we have millennials and Gen Zers that have never had to even understand the caregiving that needs, and that was used to be in the movie it's depicted. This was standard, what we used to call keeping house. If there was an elderly member in the family and they needed help, well, another family member might send their daughter or their son to go and help for 6 months, a year. My mother helped with my grandmother. She was 12 years old. My grandmother went to Pennsylvania for 2 years to help. So we've got to get that message back in some way to millennials and Gen Zers in terms, and also the biggest thing is we have to get back to showing them it's an honor. There's an honor. There's an internal warmth in our heart that comes from that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And now we're going to get to the rest of our panel. We have a very interesting panel joining us today. And I'm going to start off with Amanda Singleton. Amanda, welcome today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to get right to the question. Please let's talk about your caregiving experience. What are the most important things we need to prepare ourselves to be family caregivers, and from a legal perspective?
Well, from a legal perspective, legal and financial planning for caregiving is really one of the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves as the future person who may need care, and to our future caregivers. I became a caregiver at the age of 30, and I cared for my single mother who worked 3 jobs. And it was within 24 hours that I became a 24-hour-a-day caregiver from the time of her diagnosis. And to Mr. Jones's point, we don't live in a multi-generational way. We don't live in a community way anymore. We're all so in our silos. And in most families, if there are 2 partners, they need to work. And if you're a single individual, you need to work. So you also have job obligations and things to take care of in a life. And so it becomes really destructive to today's caregivers when intense caregiving calls, because you truly cannot do it all. It's hard to drop things and go for 2 years. I cared for my mom for 1 year and 3 days. And in the meantime, lost my job when my FMLA ran out, and didn't see my husband. We were newlyweds, didn't see my dog, didn't see my friends. I had to mourn the loss of a life that was just getting started for myself, as I was mourning the loss of my mother's life, because her diagnosis was terminal and we knew she would pass eventually. Since then, in the following 10 years, my husband and I lost 3 of 4 of our parents. We lost a sibling, caregave for a friend. So the caregiving life was something that I was living very personally as I was embarking in my professional career as a person who helps caregivers. So I've lived it and I see it. The financial and legal planning is the best way to keep autonomy. It's the best way to keep independence. It truly is an act of love to do it. And I try to explain this to people in my day-to-day life in my office. And sometimes they see it, sometimes they don't. And it's usually only after someone has been a caregiver or they've seen how things can truly, fall apart without the planning, that they say, oh, now I get it. And so thank you, Mr. Jones, for making that film and sharing it with us today.
Right. And again, it goes to kind of what you're talking about. A lot of this idea stemmed from a conversation I had with my mother. And this next question is definitely when should you start planning? When should our generation, millennials, Gen Z, when should they start planning for this, like having these type of conversations?
As soon as possible. Like Thanksgiving is next week. Do it. Just do it.
It's better than some conversations you have at Thanksgiving. Who are you dating? What are your long-term care plans?
In the last couple of years, absolutely. So, go forth boldly. And really, people should be thinking about this kind of planning when they turn 18. Their parents, their elders should be talking to them that they don't have the legal things in place that they need. I mean, caregiving comes anytime. Crisis can strike at any time. And everyone thinks it's an others situation, but it's not until it happens to you. The way to start having these conversations with our elders as millennials, as Gen Zers, is to, lead by example and lead by love in it. And, there's a lot of, control and legacy surrounding money, and you don't need to know that, and that's not for you, for it's all taken care of. But that's never true. I say all the time, if someone tells you it's all taken care of, you just run from that, because that is not going to be the case. And I can tell you anecdotally, that was not the case with my mother. She went to Europe 2 weeks before she got diagnosed. She said, I got everything taken care of. Here's my healthcare surrogate and living will, just in case you need it. Oh, cool. So I actually had those on my desk on the day I had to fly out the door to the hospital to go to her brain surgery that we didn't know she was having that morning. And then, she was recovering from brain surgery, and where's your power of attorney? Oh, no, there isn't one. And where's your will? I did one online. Oh, okay. And so a lot of that kind of like half-baked planning made my life as a caregiver super difficult, but I couldn't, tell her that, I just had to deal with the ramifications of it. And what people don't realize is the amount of money, stress, time that's saved, it's worth the uncomfortable conversation. It really is.
I'm taking notes for next time my parents ask me when we're having more children, so I can just start asking them these questions. So thank you very much. And all right, man, we're gonna come back to you in a bit. I'm gonna transfer over to our next panelist, Stefano. And Stefano, I'm gonna mess up your last name, Solario?
Yeah.
Stefano Solario, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, Stefano, when did your caregiving journey begin? And was it something you were prepared to handle as a Gen Zer? Because Stefano, how old are you?
I am 22.
I literally have a piece of clothing older than you. So yeah, when did your caregiving journey begin? And was it something you prepared for?
I think that second part of the question is kind of funny. I don't think anybody is prepared to, right? Unless you obviously had those conversations before, if you worked in the field of caregiving. But it came around my freshman year of college. My family and I decided to bring my grandma from the Philippines to live with us here. And so that was a whole process in itself. And when we were figuring out on how we were going to take care of her, because she's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a lot. For example, I had to make the sacrifice of switching universities from the one at down in Miami to the one at NSU. And so making that decision because I needed to be closer to home to be able to tend to her needs, and traveling between classes so I could feed her lunch while my siblings were at school and my parents were at work. I knew how it felt, and did I ever sit down and say this is something we all planned for? No, I don't think that was the case. I'm sure my family and I have kind of over time created a system and kind of a routine. But I think it's difficult sometimes when something happens in your life so instantaneously, and trying to figure out what you can do in the situation. It's always something that was always on my mind, and kind of led me to creating like my own thing, which is and why I'm here as well, is helping older adults with tech and how technology has evolved in helping our lives and making sure that process is easier as a caregiver. But as I said, it's an interesting journey. I love it every time. I try to take every opportunity I can with my grandma, even though she doesn't remember the conversations that we're gonna have. But I make each moment something to remember. What I do is I try to create TikToks and Instagram Reels and things that we love to enjoy together because she loves to dance. I actually have one video of ours on Instagram that reached over 1.3 million views of people who are just interested, because I just shared a 7-second video of me just giving my grandma a baby doll that she was taking care of, right? And she didn't know whether it was the real or the fake thing, but she loved it very much. And to see that 1.3 million people had that same feeling from that demonstrated that my journey as a caregiver, as a young caregiver, is relatable, right? And it doesn't matter how old you are. It was a matter of just making sure that people can talk about this. And I know it's not easy because as a college student, sometimes you don't think about being a caregiver. It's not something you never thought you'd ever be part of. And as the oldest of three, my siblings have to go through with it too, right? And I care about how they go about their college life, having to take care of our grandma. So it's really difficult. And I do think, though, I come from a culture that always knew how to take care of our older adults, had respected our elders. I think sometimes there's a lot of cultures that are grounded with that foundation, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that every Gen Z doesn't know how to take care of their elderly parents or elderly people in their lives. I think it's a matter of where they're being brought up, and it's whether they're being supported. But I'm also aware that there are certain cultures that don't really talk about caregiving, right? It's almost like a given, like, yeah, of course you're going to take care of your grandparents. No one's ever gonna, say no to that. But I think sometimes we need to encourage those communities to have that conversation, to make sure that we have these conversations, whether it is awkward or whether it's horrible, whether it's too serious, and then just add a little bit of humor and fun to it. Sometimes we joke around because, it's my other grandma on my dad's side also had dementia. So we think about what's going to happen with our parents, what's going to happen with us as we age, right? And we're still very young, but we talk about those conversations around the dinner table, and it's been interesting. It's fun. As I said, I just like to have the humor side of it and the light part of it. But there will be days where I feel like, oh my gosh, grandma, like I wish you could remember all the things that we did. But it's really, really a learning journey. And I'm just so grateful because there's a lot of people online and the community, especially here in Florida, and what AARP has done to provide that support system for young caregivers.
Well, that's a great story. And as you talk about the cultural changes, that's definitely a conversation for another day, because that's something that a lot of people have discussed. And Stefano, we're going to come back to you in a little bit. Keisha Bashio, thank you for joining us. Welcome, and I'll start off with your first question to you. First, tell us, when should you start researching and planning your caregiving options? Keisha, you're on mute.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, sorry about that. So I agree with Amanda in that sooner than better. I think that a lot of times what we see from the agency perspective is that people will call in there in a reactive mode as opposed to being proactive. And so we certainly understand, it's a case-by-case basis. Going ahead and starting your research early on just to know, what options are out there, calling on all of the different agencies that are available. You want to ask them, certain questions like, do they have a minimum amount of time that you would have to employ them or have them come into the home, what the hourly rate is, also, how much advance notice that they would need, for staffing needs. So those are all things that you can call in advance and, get answers to those questions so that you have kind of an idea of when the time comes, how to get the ball rolling. And also, if your loved one, you start to see that they're declining or that they're going to be having an upcoming medical procedure and you yourself or other, supportive family and friends are not available, you want to go ahead and get, some information for what you're going to be, coming to with that.
Thank you. Next question for you is, when you're not, and I think you may have hit on this a little bit, when you're unable to provide and receive care within your family, what other caregiving options exist for different levels of care? A lot of this discussion today has been on those who have the ability to have somebody take care, or people are serving as caregivers to their family members. But for certain situations, it's people don't have that opportunity. What other options do exist?
That's a great question, Chris. So, outside of family and friends, there's always the calling on faith-based organizations. So if your loved one is a part of a faith-based community, reaching out to the faith-based community. Also, there are lots of, agencies and organizations such as AARP. There is the Area Agency on Aging. There's the elder care services. There's the Department of Elder Affairs. So all of these, organizations and resources are going to have a lot of information on their website. And then there are places that provide volunteers. So just given the situation, you could, potentially have, a volunteer that is, trained and capable of assisting with your loved one. And you would just need to get, that set up. A lot of times, they need some lead time to be able to set that up. So just, keep that in mind. There's, the agencies that are private pay. You can also hire someone outside of an agency privately. And then there are websites too. We've all seen commercials for them where you can go on and hire caregivers, to provide services, and you would just have to look into what their cost is to be able to sign up for those.
That's a lot of resources. Thank you very much for all that. All right, now we're going to, we have some questions that have been sent in and a question for the panelists. And I'm gonna start with this first question. This is actually gonna be for both Stefano and Amanda with the first question. Give me one or two things you wish you had known before becoming a caregiver. And we'll start with Amanda.
One, it is not forever. This is going to be a season of your life. And so take every day for what it is and, understand that you will move through this time. Your loved one will move through this time, whether through healing or passing away. but it is a part of their story and yours. And so when it feels overwhelming, just remember that it is just a piece of the story. And then 2 is reach out for help. There's a statistic that's been floating around for a while that says the majority of caregivers wait a full year before they start researching resources that are condition related or local that can help them, that can help their care partner. And I hope that that's not the case, for any of us, because, no caregiver's an island. You really can't do it alone. If you're fortunate to have family who's pitching in, wonderful. If not, rely on resources that are out there, and then the caregiving community itself, just even if it's to vent and blow off steam. When I first started caregiving, I mean, the boards on like caregiver pages were, not really accessible. We didn't even have smartphones yet. So I felt, really alone, and none of my friends could relate because they were young and, just starting their lives. And so now you have access to a world of caregivers out there, and AARP has a family caregiver page on Facebook that's like one of the most supportive little corners of the internet. And I'm not actively caregiving right now. I did have a stint caregiving for my husband last year, but I've been on the page for a while, chiming in. And even when I'm not actively caregiving, it helps me. And it helps me serve my clients, and it helps me get my mind on future caregiving roles. And it helped me when I was caregiving for my husband last year too. So if you're not on it, I would strongly encourage it, and just never wait. As soon as a diagnosis or just the understanding that someone's in a state of decline happens, that's the time to start reaching out and seeing what's out there to support you.
All right. Thank you. Stefano, same question to you.
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
Really?
You took all my advice.
That's definitely, you give great advice.
No. I was gonna say, I love the fact that that hit hard for me when you said, it's an island, it's a temporary period of our lives. And it's difficult when you're in it, right, as a current caregiver now, where it's like, when is it? Well, you don't hope for it to end like in a bad way, but you want it to be. You're hoping that you're drawing near to it, so that that person also feels comfortable, and we feel comfortable as a family. So that hit me hard, Amanda. So I was like, that got to my feelings. But I wanted to say something that I wish that I had known, to your question, or something that I had known becoming a caregiver, is honestly giving people the chance to understand that this is something that I'm dealing with or going with. An example of that is, I'm surrounded with a lot of college friends and people, and to me, I always thought that they wouldn't understand if I had to say no to going to an event or something, right? But giving them that chance or the opportunity for them to understand, if that makes sense, right? And saying that they will be understanding of the situation that I'm in, and I can just say no, and I don't feel judged. I wish I knew that. I wish I knew all these resources that I know now, and being in the tech space, I guess, for older adults and caregiving, knowing all these amazing founders and companies that are involved in building solutions and products for them has been a really interesting thing for me. And if I had known that in the beginning, I think I could have reached out to those companies or to those opportunities. And then the last thing is, I wish as a caregiver, I wish I knew that it was okay for me to share that to the world. I think sometimes, coming from a culture that sometimes it's to keep it in the family, right? Or to keep it within contained rooms, worked back then. But, Gen Z are here to kind of say that this is kind of the way it is now, to have conversations about this. And so if I knew that, I would have had a more easier transition to caregiving. But I'm doing that every day now. And that's something I'm learning every day, that it's okay to talk about it. So,
Stefano, I think you and I are going to have some more conversations about this multicultural aspect as we get down the line. Ken, I'm going to send this next question to you, please. And I think it kind of talks about, like, as what they were just saying, of what things they had wished they had known over the last, prior to them becoming caregivers, and things that they wish to be able to share. For you, what, as you did this film, what was your greatest source of research to depict the realities of caregiving?
Well, we did two things. One was I interviewed caregivers. I interviewed caregivers for a mini social media engagement. And these were husbands who were taking care of their wife, for instance, at 62 years old, and she no longer could put on her bra. This was daughters who were taking care of their mother who had dementia, and she needed an ankle bracelet to make sure that if she made it out the door and out the yard, that they could find her. And these were a lot of others. And so I interviewed them. That was one part of it. And talked with them and met with them. I worked with the Alzheimer's Project. I worked with the Alzheimer's Association, and still with the Alzheimer's Project now. And then the other big one was a book called The 36-Hour Day. And that book, and the title of the book, because anyone that's caregiving or has been a caregiver, and this is one of the big ones for millennial or Gen Zer, it's not a regular day. Your day really never ends. You sleep when they sleep. And then you're up when they're up. And you're always, hopefully, as a caregiver, trying to stay what I call in front of whatever need they have, whether it is food, whether it is medicine, whether it is their hygiene, whatever it is. And so that book was a great big help. It went into legal, it went into finances, it went into most caregivers are solo, even within families. They are solo. And how do you deal with that whole aspect of it? And that is one of the biggest challenges, I think, for millennials and Gen Zers, is because when we look at the population growth in America, when we look at families now, a lot of families are no longer having 3, 4, or 5 children. They have one child. And so all of a sudden we have these solo caregivers. You're it. You're it. And when I say it, it's the old game of tag. You're it. And so that book, along with the interviews, played a big role in it. And it's continuing to play a big role, of course, with the work that we're doing beyond the movie just as an entertainment, but to create community conversations as much as we can about this. And again, hopefully some actions that will help all of us.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Keisha, for you, what are some of those difficult challenges that you hear from families who are in need of care?
I would say some of the most difficult challenges, well, certainly one of the biggest would be cost. The cost to have, caregivers come in can be an extremely, high dollar amount. And so, that's something that, I think a lot of people are sort of taken aback on when they do start researching, is just how much it costs. Now, some insurance, providers will, they do, have provisions for, some in-home care services. So that would be something that, they would want to check into in part of the research phase. But also the location of the person that's needing care. So for instance, if the person lives, in a rural community, if they're, out, way out, away from whatever particular city or town, that can be a challenge to, be able to find caregivers to staff that location. Also, if their loved one it's a complex care situation where there's advanced memory impairment associated with also, behaviors that that person may be experiencing as coping mechanisms, with their memory impairment, or if the person is bedbound or requiring 24-hour care. Those are all challenges, that we come across when people call in.
Right. And All right, this is gonna be the last question, and for Keisha and Amanda, just real quick, just one question. What are some of those important questions you should ask a prospective caregiver when considering service for your loved one? Like, what is the one most important question you should ask? Amanda, you are on mute.
There are scripts online that you can go through that will ask all of the questions. So I think my answer for the best one question is go look at the scripts and see what works for your family situation most.
All right. And Keisha, for you, what's the one question you should ask a prospective caregiver?
So, I would agree with Amanda on, making sure to go through so that you don't miss anything because it's a very emotional time. And, I think that, you want to make sure that that person is, going to take care of your loved one like they were their family. So maybe something just to, see how, they would, if it was the roles were turned and this was their family member, how they would, be, handling the care.
All right. Now, thank you very much, all of you. Let's just get an opportunity, just a couple minutes, closing remarks, some key takeaways you would like people that are watching this now, you can watch this when we replay this, that we're talking about the caregiving, talk about how a younger generation get prepared to be in this situation or just be prepared for the situation. And we're going to start from the beginning. Ken, just what's some key takeaways you would like people to have from today?
I think one of the key takeaways is that it's an honor. Caregiving is an honor. Yes, it is tough. There are challenges, there's sacrifices, but there's an honor. And therefore, by the honor of it, no matter whether you're a millennial, a Gen Z, or a baby boomer, it doesn't matter. I think when we can see the honor, then we see, like in our film, where the song is called This Love of caregiving goes a lot deeper. And I think by that, then we will be able to care for each other a lot better, and we will have to in these times that we live in. And I think as much as we can continue to do these types of things to spread the message, and not just the message and the conversation, but then to put actions behind it. And these types of actions, I think, that AARP are doing is really what we need a lot more of. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amanda and Omaha, you are an AARP National Volunteer, correct?
I speak and write as a part of the Family Caregiving department at AARP.
Okay, I just want to make sure I give you that plug right there. Yes, so can you please give us your key takeaways that you'd love people to take from today?
Yes, I think there's a little bit of fear, inherent in most of us surrounding illness and death. And that is really what prevents people from addressing these issues, but they are such a part of all of our lives. And so the conversations can and should be had, and really starting with yourself, have the conversation with yourself about what your life is going to look like if you need care and how can you make it the best possible. That can start by just doing your own documents today. AARP has free advanced directives and living wills on their website, and you can go and you can look and say, who's going to be my medical caregiver? And you can make that document today. You don't need a lawyer to do that. And so just really being truly honest with yourself and with your loved ones about caregiving and life and death is a huge takeaway. And it's a lesson that I still learn every day, even after 10 years of caregiving. So.
Thank you. Stefano.
The key takeaway I would say is that you could use technology to share your story. Social media, the things that we're doing right now, this conversation, use it as a tool, not as a means of, as we all know, a horrible means sometimes when it comes to social media, but use it as a tool to share your story. And to all those who are caring for somebody around my age and whoever is caring for somebody, you're not alone. You really are not. And I think you have to be open to having those conversations with the people our age or people who have done it before. And I think it's a matter of just keep getting yourself out there and open to that, and letting yourself be helped. That's something I would like to say, that you should let yourself be helped, especially in this journey.
Right, right. And you talk about technology as my mother was correcting me on saying one of my TikToks was too long and I need to shorten it. Right? So that was a wonderful, wonderful conversation to have. And Keisha, please, what takeaways and key points, and again, you're coming from a different perspective, that you would like people to take from this today?
I would say, kind of just a little bit of what everybody said there, and then just making sure that, people know that that there are so many resources out there and there are so many people that want to help. I know, in our case, I get people that call all the time that they really just want to just tell their story. They just want somebody to listen to what they're going through, and, sort of not even, answer any specific questions, but just to listen. So just making sure that, you take care of yourself, and you pay attention to how you're feeling. Your mental and emotional health is very important, and self-care and delegating. If you have someone that you can delegate to also call and do research on your behalf, or to look up, information on your behalf, to ask for, them to help.
Oh, that was amazing. I just want to say thank you to all our panelists today for sharing your information, sharing your story. I know this is really personal to many of you, and you all have things that you shared with me prior as we were talking about your participation here. And I just really want to say thank you to those watching. AARP has a lot of resources for family caregivers, from our Prepare to Care guides for people who are starting the caregiving journey, to state-specific resource guides and events for caregivers and their families. Please visit aarp.org/caregiving to find out more. And to millennials and Gen Z, I know I made the joke about TikTok, and Amanda brought this up. Next week is Thanksgiving. Take this opportunity, sit down with your loved ones, sit down with your family, and start having those hard conversations. Start talking to them, start making those plans, because everybody on this panel said that they went from not having to be a caregiver to being a caregiver. And we need to be prepared, take care of those that have taken care of us. And all right, so again, on behalf of AARP Florida and our panel, my name is Christopher Turner. Thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy holidays and be safe.